I love the door handle scenes. Every time there's a door handle, it's like so nerve wracking. We're somewhere over here. I dropped off several times after that, and each time an anguished start jolted me awake. Panting, exhausted, I pressed myself closer to her, my heart gradually growing calmer. She touched me cautiously on the cheeks and forehead with the tips of her fingers to see whether or not I was feverish. It was Rhea, the real Rhea, the one and only Rhea. A change came over me. I ceased to struggle, and almost at once I fell asleep. I was awakened by an agreeable sensation of coolness. My face was covered by a damp cloth. I pulled it off and found Rhea laying over me. She was smiling and squeezing out a second cloth over a bowl. "What a sleep," she said, laying another compress on my forehead. "Are you ill?" "No." I wrinkled my forehead. The skin was supple once again. Rhea sat on the edge of my bed, her black hair brushed back over the collar of a bathrobe, a man's bathrobe, with orange and black stripes, the sleeves turned back to the elbow. That's unnecessary. You didn't have to write that. Unless it's a symbolism for something. But seeing how this is the poor translation, I don't trust that line. I was terribly hungry. It was at least 20 hours since my last meal. When Rhea had finished her ministrations, I got up. 2 dresses draped over the back of a chair caught my eye. 2 absolutely identical white dresses, each decorated with a row of red buttons. I myself had helped Rhea out of one of them, and she reappeared yesterday evening, dressed in the second. She followed my glance. I had to cut the seam open with scissors. She said, "I think the zip fastener must have got stuck." The sight of the 2 identical dresses filled me with a horror which exceeded anything I had felt hitherto. Rhea was busy tightening up the medicine chest. I turned my back and bit my knuckles. Unable to take my eyes off the 2 dresses, or rather the original dress and its double, I backed towards the door. The basin tap was running noisily. I opened the door and, slipping out of the room, cautiously closed it behind me. I heard the sound of running water, the clinking of bottles, then suddenly all sound ceased. I waited, my jaw clenched, my hand gripping the door handle, but with little hope of holding it shut. It was nearly torn from my grasp by a savage jerk, but the door did not open. It shook and vibrated from top to bottom. Dazed, I let go of the handle and stepped back. The panel, made of some plastic material, caved in as though an invisible person at my side had tried to break into the room. The steel frame bent further and further inwards, and the paint was cracking. Suddenly I understood. Instead of pushing the door, which opened outwards, Rhea was trying to open it by pulling it towards her. The reflection of the lighting strip in the ceiling was distorted in the white painted door panel. There was a resounding crack and panel. Force beyond its limits gave way. Simultaneously, the hand vanished, torn from its mounting. 2 blood-stained hands appeared, thrusting through the opening and smearing the white paint with blood. Oh wow. The door split in 2, the broken halves hanging askew on their hinges. Oh wow, hold on. Let me go back. What is going on here? That's crazy. It was nearly torn from my grasp by a savage jerk. Oh, that was her. But the door did not open. It shook and vibrated from top to bottom. Dazed, I let go of the handle and stepped back. The panel, made of some plastic material, caved in as though an invisible person at my side had tried to break into the room. The steel frame bent further and further inwards, and the paint was cracking. Suddenly, I understood. Instead of pushing the door, which opened outwards, Rhea was trying to open it by pulling it towards her. The reflection of the shining strip in the ceiling was distorted in the white painted door panel. There was a resounding crack, and the panel, forced beyond its limits, gave way. Simultaneously, the handle vanished, torn from its mounting. Two blood-stained hands appeared, thrusting through the opening and smearing the white paint with blood. The door split in two, the broken halves hanging askew on their hinges. First, a face appeared, deathly pale, then a wild-looking apparition dressed in an orange and black bathrobe flung itself, sobbing upon my chest. I wanted to escape, but it was too late, and I was rooted to the spot. Rhea was breathing convulsively, her disheveled head drumming against my chest. Before I could put my arms around her to hold her up, Rhea collapsed. Avoiding the ragged edges of the broken panel, I carried her into the room and laid her on the bed. Her fingertips were grazed and the nails torn. When her hands turned upwards, I saw the palms were cut to the bone. I examined her face. Her glazed eyes showed no sign of recognition. Rhea! The only answer was an inarticulate groan. I went over to the medicine cabinet. The bed creaked. I turned round. Rhea was sitting up, looking at her bleeding hands with astonishment. Chris, she sobbed. What happened to me? You hurt yourself trying to break down the door, I answered curtly. My lips were twitching convulsively and I had to bite down the lower one to keep it under control. Rhea's glance took in the pieces of door panel hanging from the steel frame. When she turned her eyes back towards me, she was doing her best to hide her terror, but I could see her chin trembling. I cut off some squares of gauze, picked up a pot of antiseptic powder, and returned to the bedside. The glass jar slipped through my hands and shattered, but I no longer needed it. I lifted one of Rhea's hands. The nails, still surrounded by traces of clotted blood, had regrown. There was a pink scar in the hollow of her palm, but even this scar was healing, disappearing in front of my eyes. I sat beside her and stroked her face, trying to smile without much success. What did you do that for, Rhea? I did. That? With her eyes, she indicated the door. Yes. Don't you remember? No. That is, I saw you weren't there. I was very frightened then. And what? I looked for you. I thought that perhaps you were in the bathroom. Only then did I notice that the sliding door covering the entrance to the bathroom had been pushed back. And then I ran to the door. And after that, I can't remember. Something must have happened. What? I don't know. What do you remember? I was sitting here on the bed. She swung her legs over the edge of the bed, got up, and went over to the shattered door. Chris! Walking up behind her, I took her by the shoulders. She was shaking. She suddenly turned and whispered, Chris! Chris! Calm yourself. Chris, if it's me. Chris, am I an epileptic? What an extraordinary idea, my sweet. The doors in this place are rather special. We left the room as the shutter was grinding its way up the window. The blue sun was sinking into the ocean. I guided Rhea to the small kitchen on the other side of the dome. Together we raided the cupboards and the refrigerators. I soon noticed that Rhea was scarcely better than I was at cooking or even at opening tins. I devoured the contents of 2 tins and drank innumerable cups of coffee. Rhea also ate, but as children eat when they are not hungry and do not want to displease their parents. On the other hand, she was not forcing herself, simply taking in nourishment automatically, indifferently. After our meal, we went into the sick bay next to the radio cabin. I had an idea. I told Rhea that I wanted to give her a medical examination, a straightforward checkup. Sat her in a mechanical chair and took a syringe and some needles out of the sterilizer. I knew exactly where each object was to be found. As far as the model of the station's interior was concerned, the instructors had not overlooked a single detail during my training course. Rhea held out her fingers. I took a sample of blood. I smeared the blood on a slide, which I laid in the suction pipe, introduced it into the vacuum tank, and bombarded it with silver ions. Performing a familiar task had a soothing effect, and I felt better. Rhea, leaning back on the cushions in the mechanical chair, gazed around at the instruments in the sick bay. The buzzing of the video phone broke the silence. I lifted the receiver. Kelvin. I looked at Rhea. She was still quiet, apparently exhausted by her recent efforts. I heard a sigh of relief. At last. It was Snow. He's finally here. I waited. The receiver pressed close to my ear. You've had a visit, haven't you? Yes. Are you busy? Yes. A little osculation, eh? I suppose you've got a better suggestion? A game of chess, maybe? Don't be so touchy, Kelvin. Sartorius wants to meet you. He wants all three of us to meet. Very kind of him, I answered, taken aback. But I stopped, then went on. Is he alone? No, I haven't explained properly. He wants to have a talk with us. We'll set up a three-way video phone link, but with the telescreen lenses covered. I see. Why didn't he contact me himself? Is he frightened of me? Quite possibly, grunted Snow. What do you say? A conference in an hour's time. Will that suit you? That's fine. I could see him on the screen, just his face about the size of a fist. For a moment he looked at me attentively. I could hear the crackling of the electric current. Then he said hesitantly, Are you getting on all right? Not too bad. How about you? Not so well as you, I dare say. May I? Do you want to come over here? I glanced at Rhea over my shoulder. She was leaning back, legs crossed, her head bent. With a morose air, she was fiddling mechanically with a little chrome ball on the end of a chain fixed to the armrest. Ooh, my noodles are burning. Snow's voice erupted. Stop that, do you hear? I told you to stop it. I could see his profile on the screen, but I could no longer hear him, although his lips were moving. He had put his hand over the microphone. No, I can't come, he said quickly. Later, perhaps, in any case. I'll contact you in an hour. The screen went blank. I replaced the receiver. Who was it? Asked Rhea indifferently. Snow. A cyber technician. You don't know him. Is this going on much longer? Are you bored? I put the first of the series of slides into the neutron microscope, and one after another, I pressed the different color switches. The magnetic fields rumbled hollowly. That's not much to do in here. And if my humble company isn't enough for you... I was talking distractedly with long gaps between my words. I pulled the big black hood round the eyepiece of the microscope towards me and leaned my forehead against the resilient foam rubber viewer. I could hear Rhea's voice, but without taking in what she was saying. Beneath my gaze, sharply foreshortened, was a vast desert flooded with silvery light and strewn with rounded boulders, red corpuscles, which trembled and wriggled behind a veil of mist. I focused the eyepiece and penetrated further into the depths of the silvery landscape. Without taking my eyes away from the viewer, I turned the viewfinder when a boulder, a single corpuscle, detached itself and appeared at the junction of the crosshairs. I enlarged the image. The lens had apparently picked up a deformed erythrocyte sunken in the center, whose uneven edges projected sharp shadows over the depths of a circular crater. The crater, bristling with silver ion deposits, extended beyond the microscope's field of vision. The nebulous outlines of threads of albumin, distorted and atrophied, appeared in the midst of an opalescent liquid. A worm of albumin twisted and turned beneath the crosshairs of the lens. Gradually, I increased the enlargement. At any moment, I should reach the limit of this exploration of the depths. The shadow of a molecule occupied the whole of the space. Then the image became fuzzy. There was nothing to be seen. There should have been the firmament of a quivering cloud of atoms, but I saw nothing. A dazzlement light filled the screen, which was flawlessly clear. I pushed the lever to its utmost. The angry whirring noise grew louder, but the screen remained a blank. An alarm signal sounded once, then was repeated. The circuit was overloaded. I took a final look at the silvery desert, then I cut the current. I looked at Rhea. She was in the middle of a yawn, which she changed adroitly into a smile. Am I in good health? She asked. Excellent. Couldn't be better. I continued to look at her, and once more I felt as though something was crawling along my lower lip. What had happened exactly? What was the meaning of it? Was this body frail and weak in appearance, but indestructible in reality, actually made of nothing? I gave the microscope cylinder a blow with my fist. Was the instrument out of order? No. I knew that it was working perfectly. I had followed the procedure faithfully. First the cells, then the albumin, then the molecules, and everything was just as I was accustomed to seeing it in the course of examining thousands of slides. But the final step, into the heart of the matter had taken me nowhere. I put a ligature on Rhea, took some blood from a median vein, and transferred it to a graduated glass, then divided it between several test tubes and began the analysis. These took longer than usual. I was rather out of practice. The reactions were normal, every one of them. I dropped some congealed acid onto a coral-tinted pearl, smoke, the blood turned gray and the dirty foam rose to the surface. Disintegration, decomposition, faster and faster. I turned my back to get another test tube. When I looked again at the experiment, I nearly dropped a slim glass vial. Beneath the skin of dirty foam, a dark coral was rising. The blood destroyed by the acrid was recreating itself. It was crazy, impossible. Chris, I heard my name called as though from a great distance. Chris, the video phone. What? Oh, thanks. The instrument had been buzzing for some time, but I had only just noticed it. I picked up the receiver. Calvin, I'm in page 100. We're going to stop it there because I want to eat.